Hey guys, tonight we're cruising through a rain-slicked Buenos Aires in 1962, a city full of cigarette smoke, political ghosts, and a taxi driver who's been carrying more than just passengers. Picture this: the cab lights glowing like fireflies in the drizzle, the sound of tango bleeding from apartment radios, and a man behind the wheel who doesn't blink when someone calls him by the wrong name. Because maybe that name fits just as well. You probably won't survive this shift, to be honest. Not with what's waiting in the back seat. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your city and what time it is where you're listening. I love seeing where these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts on a Tuesday, or maybe a Thursday. The city doesn't care about the details. It only remembers the wet pavement and how the light turns amber before it fades. Hector Vargas adjusts his rearview mirror, watches the rain blur the world behind him, and lets his cab idle at the corner of Avenida Corrientes and Uruguay. It's nearly midnight. He should have clocked out hours ago. But sometimes, when the air smells like burnt sugar and old tires, Hector drives just to hear the engine think. Tonight, the city whispers louder than usual. His last fare, a nervous law student, paid in coins, apologized for the smell of beer on his breath, and asked if Hector thought democracy was coming back. Hector just laughed. In Argentina, laughter is safer than answers. He's about to head home when a woman hails him from the curb. She doesn't wave, just stands under a flickering street lamp, coat collar turned high, one hand on a black leather satchel. "Recoleta," she says as she climbs in. "No, please. No small talk." Her voice is smooth, rehearsed, like someone who orders danger the way others order coffee. Hector nods. He's been a taxi driver long enough to know when not to ask questions. But something about her smells like secrets. A hint of gardenia mixed with gunpowder. The drive is silent. Outside, the neon signs of Perillas and pool halls blur into colored fog. Inside, the only sound is the rhythmic hum of tires slicing through puddles. She doesn't check her watch, doesn't fidget, just watches the window, like it's a screen playing a movie only she can see. When they reach the cemetery gates, she leans forward. Her breath fogs the glass. This is fine. She pays cash. Large bills. Too large for such a short ride. And then, almost as an afterthought, she slides a red envelope into the crevice between the front seats. "You'll know when to open it," she murmurs, already stepping out. Hector blinks. "Senora, you forgot." But she's gone. Just a silhouette walking into the fog. Swallowed by marble angels and cypress trees, he stares at the envelope. It's sealed in wax. Heavy. Thicker than paper ought to be. A symbol is pressed into the seal. Something Cyrillic, or maybe just bad handwriting. He tells himself to leave it. Drive away. Go home. But the cab doesn't move. The rain taps harder, like fingers drumming on a coffin lid. In the distance, a thunder roll echoes over the River Plate. Somewhere in the city, a dog howls and goes quiet. Hector exhales through his nose and drives. His apartment smells like boiled rice and loneliness. On the wall hangs a framed photograph of a younger man in military uniform. Him, 10 years ago. Before the coup. Before the taxi. He hides the envelope behind a loose brick in the kitchen wall. A space where he once stored contraband radios for a smuggler who paid in unmarked pesos. Old habits don't fade. They just change uniforms. Outside, the rain becomes a steady hiss, like a worn record spinning on a dusty player. Hector sits at the window, drinking mate too hot for comfort. and watching the city sleep, or pretend to. The thing about Buenos Aires is that it dreams with one eye open. It never forgets who vanished and who vanished them. Tonight, Hector knows someone's keeping watch. He doesn't know if it's the police, the ghosts, or the woman with gardenia breath. Maybe all three. He locks the window and draws the curtain, but the city's pulse beats on, steady and slow, like a warning. Many people still think that Argentina's secrets live only in history books, but cities like this never bury their dead. They just give them new names and taxi licenses. Hector dreams of trains that go nowhere. Long, rusted carriages rolling through the dark, carrying faceless passengers who never speak. When he wakes, the sky is a muted steel, and the birds outside his window are arguing in a language older than fear. He lights a cigarette, even though he quit last July. He tells himself it's for the smoke, something to watch while the mate water heats. But really, it's for the silence. Some mornings, silence needs company. The envelope is still behind the brick. He doesn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, he checks his cab. The old Ford sits in the courtyard like a dog waiting for a walk. He runs his hand along the hood. No scratches, no strange markings, no signs someone's been inside during the night. But that doesn't mean no one has. The red wax seal presses against his memory all day. At the car wash, he sees the color again, on a woman's lipstick. At the corner newsstand, on a magazine cover. Red like blood that hasn't figured out how to scream. By sunset, he's convinced himself the envelope is probably a love letter. Maybe the woman meant to deliver it to some secret affair. Maybe it's a mistake. But then, why the thick paper? Why the weight? He cracks. Back in the kitchen, the brick slides out with a scrape. The envelope is cool to the touch, like it's been hiding from something. He doesn't open it right away. He studies the wax, trying to decode the symbol. Could be Russian, or Greek, or just a bad drawing of a bicycle wheel. He breaks the seal. Inside, a photograph, 2 passports, and a folded page that smells faintly of cologne and ash. The photo is black and white. A young girl, maybe 12, standing in front of a war monument. She holds a toy horse in one hand, and she's not smiling. Behind her, there's a man wearing mirrored sunglasses. His reflection shows a third person, cut off by the edge of the frame. One passport is Argentine, the other says Soviet Union. Both have his picture. Not similar, not could be his cousin. His. One shows his real name. The other, a Cyrillic version with a birth date 2 years off. The Soviet passport is older, creased, worn, edges stained with what might be wine or blood. He doesn't remember posing for either, and yet, the photo is unmistakably him. Same scar on the jaw, same squint, same knot of regret between the brows. The folded page holds coordinates, a meeting time, no names, just one line in careful ink. The river forgets. You must not. Hector sits back. The room feels smaller. He closes his eyes, hoping this is one of those half-dreams. The kind that vanish when the kettle screams, but the water never boils. He never turned on the stove. That night, he drives longer than usual, picks up a fare in once, drops another in San Telmo. The city blurs by in sepia tones. His fingers tap the steering wheel to the rhythm of old tangos he pretends not to remember. In the rearview mirror, the streets look different. Too empty, too arranged, like a set waiting for the actors to return. At a red light, a man in a coat too nice for the neighborhood leans into the window. "You're Vargas, yes?" Hector doesn't answer. The man slips a card through the crack in the glass. No name, just a time. Thursday, 4 p.m. And a place, Calle Taquari, number 88. "Don't be late," the man says. "It's already too late." Then he disappears into traffic, swallowed by umbrellas and smog. Hector doesn't move for a while. The car behind him honks. He waves an apology, but his hands feel wrong, like someone else is borrowing them. He drives to the park and sits for an hour. No passengers, no music, just the sound of water slapping stone near the fountain, and a distant voice humming something in Russian. Or maybe Yiddish. It's hard to tell in the dark. Many people still think the Cold War didn't reach Buenos Aires, that the city was just a postcard backdrop for European spies playing cat and mouse in Berlin and Vienna. But Argentina had its own shadows, some with accents, some without tongues. And Hector? He drove them. He just didn't know what they were carrying. Not until now, the next morning, the sun claws its way through the grime-smeared kitchen window like it's trying to escape the sky. Buenos Aires never glows. It stains. Every sunrise is a bruise, and Hector's flat feels like it's wearing all of them at once. He fixes his mate, hands a little too deliberate, like he's reminding them not to tremble. The bombilla rattles against the side of the gourd. The water's just hot enough to scald, just the way his father used to drink it. A man who believed bitterness built character, or at least made silence easier to swallow. He doesn't open the envelope again. Doesn't have to. The Soviet passport burns in his head like a light bulb left on too long. Instead, he sits at the window, watches the pigeons argue over stale bread, listens to the distant sound of a tram clattering across Avenida Rivadavia. A radio somewhere is playing boleros. Another is screaming political commentary. The city speaks in broken voices, and he's fluent in all of them. That card, the one with the address, sits folded next to his ashtray. Calle Taquari, Thursday. Today is Wednesday. He has time. Time to make choices. Or at least pretend he has any left. He thinks about the last time someone gave him an address with no explanation. It was 1955, just after the coup. He was 26 and still thought driving a general across town in the middle of a lockdown was an adventure. The general died 3 weeks later. Some say heart attack. Others say heart attack induced by a pistol at the base of the skull. Hector wasn't paid for the ride, but he was never arrested either. He knows that balance comes at a price, the kind you pay years later, in smaller, crueler installments. As he sips, the photo of the girl returns to his mind. The monument behind her had Cyrillic script. Could have been Leningrad. Could have been Montevideo's Soviet friendship garden. Hard to tell when you're not supposed to ask. And that toy horse she held, handmade, carved wood. Hector knows because he had one just like it, gifted by a Russian sailor who offered it in exchange for a ride and silence. The sailor smelled of salt and something older, maybe fear. Could it be the same? No, that would mean he stands too fast. The chair legs screech across the tile. He needs to move, to do something. So he does what he always does when the questions get too loud. He drives. His cab is warm from the sun, but cold on the inside, like a metal shell that forgot how to hold heat. He starts the engine, lets the low growl settle into his bones. The first passenger is a housewife with tired eyes and 2 bags of groceries. She doesn't speak, just gives an address in Almagro and stares out the window. Hector wonders what she's hiding. Everyone hides something. Even the bread smells like secrets today. The second fare is a man in a pinstripe suit who talks too much. Politics, soccer, the rising price of beef. He tries to joke about Peron. Hector laughs in the right places, but feels like he's sitting next to a ventriloquist dummy who learned sarcasm from the newspaper. The third fare never arrives. Instead, Hector parks at the edge of Plaza de Mayo and watches the pigeons circle the pink palace. There's a woman protesting alone, holding a photograph of a missing son. The photo is faded, the edges frayed like it's been held more than it's been looked at. He doesn't recognize the boy, but the pain in the woman's eyes, that's universal. He goes home before sundown, eats half a bowl of rice, doesn't bother seasoning it. No point. The night already tastes like iron. He rereads the card. Calle Tacuarí, número 88, Thursday, 4 p.m. He makes a plan, if you could call it that. Drive past the address early, scope it out, park close, leave the engine running. Watch. Always watch first. But when Thursday arrives, none of that matters. At 3:50, he's already on the street, parked 2 buildings away. The address is an old tailor shop, closed, windows dusty, sign missing a few letters, so it just reads, Aloria YH. At 3:58, the door opens. No one walks out. No one walks in, but the door stays open. Hector counts to 60, then another 60. The street is too quiet, so he walks in. The shop smells like wool and vinegar. A single bulb hangs from the ceiling. A man sits in the back, threading a needle. You're early, the man says without looking up. Traffic was light. The man smiles. In this city? That's the first lie of the day. He motions to a chair. Hector sits. On the table, another envelope. This one white, no seal. For tomorrow, the man says. What if I say no? Then someone else opens it. Someone with your passport, your face, your fingerprints, and your name, if we must. Hector picks it up. It's lighter than the last one, but heavier in meaning. You don't remember, do you? The man asks. Minsk, the train station, winter of 49. I've never been to Minsk. Memory is a luxury in this line of work. The needle slips through cloth, the man doesn't flinch. As Hector leaves, the man calls after him. The girl in the photo. She remembers you. Many people still think spies are trained, polished men in press suits and clipped accents. But sometimes they're taxi drivers, tired ones, with too many names and nowhere safe to put any of them. And sometimes they don't even know they're spies. The tango hits him first. It comes floating from an alley just off Avenida Belgrano, dragged along by an old radio's dusty lungs. Bandoneon sighs. A violin weeps. And somewhere in between, a voice like cracked glass sings about love and death, and something in between. Probably betrayal. It always circles back to betrayal. Hector doesn't mean to follow the sound. His feet just move, like they remember something his mind is still trying to forget. It's late, but not yet dark. That hour when Buenos Aires blushes golden and the shadows sharpen at the edges. The alley is narrow, the kind of place where cats fight for dominion and secrets stick to the walls like chewing gum. And there she is, Elena. She's older now. Everyone is. But the way she holds herself, one heel just slightly off the ground, spine straight, eyes with that same dangerous stillness. It's all still there. Like a painting someone tried to age, only to realize it refused to fade. She doesn't smile. Just finishes the step she's practicing with a ghost partner, then turns to him with a single word. Hector. The past pronounces his name differently. No one else calls him that anymore. He's been Tono to his regulars, Che to the strangers, Carlos once to a customs officer. But to her, he is always Hector, with that accent falling like a hammer. He nods. Still dancing in alleys? Still hiding behind steering wheels? Touché. They walk without saying much. Words feel too loud here. He used to think tango was about the music, the footwork, the sharp elegance. But Elena taught him it was about listening to the space between steps, the breath before the touch, the heartbeat that stutters in hesitation. Now she listens again. I heard something, she says finally, leaning against a graffiti-tagged wall. Someone's been looking for old ghosts. Buenos Aires is built on them. This one's Russian. Hector flinches. I don't know anything. He lies. You never did, she says gently. That was always your strength. She tells him about a man with mirrored sunglasses asking questions in La Boca, about another spotted at the docks with a photograph matching the one in Hector's pocket. They say the girl survived, Elena murmurs, that she never made it home, but she never stopped looking. He says nothing. You were just the driver, she adds, softer. But sometimes the driver knows where the bodies don't end up. A rat scurries behind a trash bin. The music ends. The silence afterward is heavier than anything they've said. Elena reaches into her coat and pulls out a folded paper, creased, faintly damp, a photograph. The same girl, older now, maybe late teens, standing in front of a bookstore. She was here, Elena says, 3 weeks ago. Left this with a man named Fuentes. Hector's mouth dries. Fuentes? The policeman who collects soft cases. You know the one. He does. Detective Fuentes. Thin hands. Thick mustache. The kind of man who always apologizes before asking the worst questions. He's not known for action, but for remembrance. The sort of cop who writes things in a little book just in case the truth needs a witness later. She's looking for someone, Elena adds. Not a killer. Not a smuggler, just someone who didn't speak up when he should have. The air shifts. Something in it feels like a dare. Do you still dance? Hector asks, though he knows the answer. Only with ghosts, she says, then places her hand in his. There's no music now, but they move anyway. Just a slow step back, a pivot, a glance over the shoulder. The kind of tango that isn't for watching, only surviving. He pulls away before it becomes something else. She lets him go. As he walks back to the car, she calls out, You're not the same man, Hector. I hope not. Then prove it. Many people still think tango is just a dance, but in Buenos Aires, it's a confession. A language of weight shifts and near collisions, where the truth spins on the ball of your foot. And tonight, the truth is catching up. Back in his cab, he finds a slip of paper tucked under the windshield wiper, a different address. Written in a feminine hand, Bar la Medianoche. Tonight. Midnight. Come alone. He doesn't recognize the handwriting, but he knows who sent it. The neon sign at Bar la Medianoche doesn't flicker. It pulses, like a weak heartbeat trying not to give up. It's just past 11 when Hector parks 2 blocks down and approaches on foot. He doesn't want to be seen driving in. This part of town doesn't mind shadows, but it remembers license plates. The bar is wedged between a shuttered bakery and a locksmith that never unlocks anything. Its windows are blacked out, but the bass line of a slow bolero leaks through the cracks. The smell of warm beer and older sweat hits before he touches the handle. Inside, nothing has changed. Same chipped mirror behind the bar, same green vinyl booths that trap conversations. Same man behind the counter, polishing a glass he'll never use. Vargas, the bartender says without looking up. Took you long enough. Only 3 people in Buenos Aires still call him by that name. 1 is probably dead. 1 is Elena. And the 3rd is this man. Ramiro, a bartender with a lopsided eye and a photographic memory that works selectively. You sent the note? Hector asks, sliding onto the last stool near the end. Ramiro shrugs. She did, the singer. Hector's throat tightens. Lucia? She still calls herself that. Whether or not she is, well, who knows anymore? Lucia. The voice of a velvet knife. Once, she filled tango halls with the kind of aching that made grown men forget the names of their wives. Now, she sings here, for 10 people at a time, beneath a ceiling that leaks and applause that never comes. She appears 10 minutes later, as if conjured, wrapped in a red shawl that makes her look like a wound with legs. Her eyes flick to him the moment she walks in, and for a beat, the world slows. He hasn't seen her in 12 years. "You look tired," she says as she sits. No kiss, no warmth. Just that smoky voice that always seemed to carry secrets across rooms. "Too much driving," he replies. "You always said you'd quit before it aged you." I lied. She doesn't smile, but something in her eyes softens. Just for a second. They sit in the booth by the jukebox. No one else is close enough to hear, and Ramiro knows how to keep the music just loud enough. Lucia pulls out a cigarette, then offers him one. He takes it, lights hers first. Old habit. "I saw your name," she says after the first drag. "Not your real one, the other." "Soviet or Argentine?" She smirks. "The one they stamped on a report. 2 years ago. You were mentioned in connection with a shipment from Odessa. They thought it was arms. Turned out it was radios. I just drove a truck." "You always just drove." There's no judgment in her voice. Just disappointment's cousin. Something heavier, quieter. "I'm not here to blame you," she adds, fingers drumming the table. "I'm here because someone is looking for the girl." Hector stares at the table. The grain in the wood seems to swirl, like a fingerprint trying to escape. "She's alive?" he asks. Lucia nods. "More than you are. She's been asking questions in the language you pretend not to speak." He almost laughs. "I don't speak Russian." "No, but you used to dream in it." That hits harder than he expects. She leans in. "Her name is Sophia, the girl from the photo. She's not a girl anymore, and she doesn't want revenge. She wants to know why you left." "I didn't leave," he says. "I was told to disappear, and you were always good at following orders." The air between them hums, thick with old things, music and lies and half-forgotten promises. She slides something across the table, a napkin, folded neatly. Inside, a metro ticket, 2 weeks old. On the back, in Cyrillic, is a single word: Papa. Papa. Hector's hands tremble. "She thinks you're her father," he whispers. Lucia meets his eyes. She's right, but that's not possible. He would have known, wouldn't he? Back then, things were messy. Quick departures, names changed like coats. He remembers the woman, Sophia's mother, a translator. A week together, hiding in a pension above a butcher's shop. But a daughter? He's silent for a long time. "She wants to meet," Lucia says. "She's not asking for anything else. Except the truth. That's more than most people ever get." They finish their drinks in silence. Outside, the city mumbles in sleep. Before leaving, Lucia turns to him at the door. "You should speak to Fuentes. He's the one she trusts." "She doesn't trust me." "Why not?" "Because I do know everything," she says, then disappears into the alley, like a song that's already halfway finished. Hector walks back to the cab. The engine's cold. The streets are quieter than they should be. As he pulls away, he sees a man watching from across the street. Thin, gloved hands, no expression, just standing, waiting. Many people still think a life can be lived without looking back. But in a city like this, the past doesn't just catch up. It rides in the back seat, watching, always quiet, until it speaks your name. The next morning, Hector dreams again. But this time, he remembers. Not everything, just fragments. A narrow apartment with fogged windows. A woman humming while brushing her hair. The smell of cabbage soup. And a child's voice calling something from another room. He wakes before the voice finishes the word. Outside, the city is drowning in heat. The kind of thick summer humidity that makes you feel like you're walking through soup. It clings to shirts, fogs up windshields, and turns every cab ride into a slow boil. He doesn't turn on the fan. He needs to hear everything today. Before he leaves, he checks the contents of both envelopes again, just to be sure he hasn't dreamed it all. The photograph is still there. The girl with the toy horse, the 2 passports, the meeting address from the tailor shop. All real, which means this mess is too. He doesn't bother shaving, just puts on a clean shirt, blue, short-sleeved, unremarkable, and drives. Detective Fuentes works out of a station that doesn't look like a station. From the street, it's just a bookstore with dusty windows and lopsided shelves. The kind of place you'd expect to find old poetry collections and even older clerks. But in the back, past the curtain behind the true crime section, there's a staircase that leads to the unofficial office of unofficial things. Fuentes is exactly as Hector remembers. Thin frame, always a jacket, no matter the weather, and fingers that seem to be counting something invisible. He's not writing when Hector walks in, just sitting, looking at an ashtray full of clean toothpicks. "Hector Vargas," he says, like he's reciting the name of a ghost he never liked. "Still not dead," Hector replies. Fuentes gestures to the chair across from him. No handshakes, no pleasantries. Just 2 men pretending this is about paperwork. "I heard you've been seen in some interesting places lately," Fuentes says. "Midnight bars, abandoned tailor shops, docks." "You forgot cemeteries?" "I never forget cemeteries." They sit in silence for a moment. The hum of the ceiling fan makes the room feel more like a confession booth than a police station. "I've been told a young woman is looking for me," Hector says finally. "She thinks I'm her father." Fuentes doesn't flinch. "She thinks a lot of things. Is she wrong? That's the question, isn't it?" "I don't know." Fuentes stands, opens a drawer, and pulls out a file. He drops it on the desk. A cloud of dust sighs into the air. He flips it open. Inside, grainy surveillance photos. One is of Hector in his cab, parked near the Recoleta cemetery. Another is a close-up of the red envelope in his hand. And a third. Hector's breath catches. A young woman standing on the steps of the Russian embassy, her headscarf blowing in the wind. "Sofia. She came through 2 weeks ago," Fuentes says. "Used the Soviet passport to get in. Used the Argentine one to get out. She has clearance I've never seen. From whom? Depends on who you think's still running this part of the Cold War." Fuentes leans forward. "You were a driver, yes, but only because someone needed you to be. You were the line between packages and purpose. They never trusted couriers to ask questions. But you, Hector, you never asked anything." "What do they want now?" Fuentes sighs. "Not they, she. She wants to meet, but on her terms. Neutral ground, tomorrow, 8 p.m. Bar Rivas. You know it?" He nods. Everyone knows Bar Rivas, the tango crowd, the union men, the quiet informants who read romance novels and carry knives in their boots. "She'll ask you something," Fuentes says. "Don't lie, even if I don't know the truth?" "Especially then." Fuentes closes the folder and slides it back into the drawer like it never existed. "One more thing," he adds, almost like an afterthought. "Someone's watching her. Not police, not embassy, maybe Cuban, maybe not. She's being followed. And if they realize who she's really after, they'll come for me," Hector finishes. Fuentes nods. "They might already be close." As Hector stands to leave, Fuentes offers something strange, a folded handkerchief. "Wipe your prints off everything you've touched in the last 2 days." Hector takes it. At the door, he turns. "Why are you helping?" "I'm not," Fuentes says. "I'm trying to stay alive, and people like you attract bullets." Outside, the city feels louder. Too many horns, too many glances that last a second too long. He doesn't drive home. He doesn't even go to the cab. Instead, He walks through San Telmo's narrow streets, past antique shops that haven't changed their windows in years. He needs to feel the ground, needs to know what's real. The sky threatens rain, but doesn't deliver. He ends up at a tiny cafe near the river, orders nothing, just sits. At the next table, two men speak softly in Russian. He doesn't understand much, but one word lands hard. Doch, daughter. He doesn't look at them, doesn't speak, just rises and walks away before they see his face. Many people still think Cold War spies were fluent, fearless, surgical. But the truth, most were confused men who ran errands for people whose names they never learned. And some of them, like Hector, are only now realizing what they were actually delivering, and to whom. The rain finally arrives just after dusk, falling in lazy sheets that make the city shimmer like a postcard sent from somewhere lonelier. Buenos Aires always looks better wet, less honest, more like a promise someone forgot to keep. Hector drives, not with purpose, not toward any address, just moves through the city like a ghost retracing old steps. He passes El Once station, where he once dropped off a passenger who vanished into the crowd and was never seen again. He rolls past the corner where a young anarchist whispered a goodbye that sounded too much like an apology. The streets have stories, and his tires know them all by heart. The cab rattles slightly, protesting the potholes of Avenida Independencia. He turns off the radio. Too much noise. Tonight, he just wants the sound of the rain and his own regrets. He finds himself in front of Bar La Medianoche again. He hadn't meant to go there. He tells himself he won't go in. He goes in. Ramiro's not behind the bar this time. A kid with a neck tattoo and a voice like sandpaper nods as Hector enters. No one else looks up. The bar is more crowded than last time. Half whispers, cigarette smoke, clinking glasses. A jazz singer croons softly in the corner, her voice frayed like the hem of an old curtain. He spots her in the back booth. Lucia, same red shawl. Same look like she's halfway through a secret she hasn't decided whether to tell. He sits. "You met Fuentes," she says. Not a question. "He gave me a time and place." She raises an eyebrow. "He usually gives warnings, not invitations." Hector shrugs. "Maybe he thinks I won't live long enough to need both." She slides him a glass of something clear. He doesn't ask what it is. "Sophia," she begins, rolling the name around like it's too sharp. She doesn't trust easily. She was raised in places where you don't speak unless it's in code. She thinks I'm her father. Lucia nods. "And? I don't know if I am. You think that matters to her?" He leans back. The booth creaks. "She wants the truth," he says. Lucia smiles. "Everyone does until they hear it." There's a pause. One of those long ones where the music feels louder and the shadows lean in. "She left something," Lucia says, "for you." She reaches into her bag and pulls out a small item wrapped in cloth. Places it carefully on the table. He unfolds it. A wooden toy horse, hand-carved, worn, one ear chipped. The tail glued back on long ago. His breath catches. "I gave her this," he murmurs. "You gave her mother that," Lucia corrects. "For protection, for comfort. You were leaving. You didn't want to leave empty hands." "I was supposed to come back." "You didn't." The truth lands heavier than he expected. It always does. He runs a finger along the grain of the toy. Memories flood in. Disconnected flashes of a snow-dusted alley, shared cigarettes, laughter in the dark, the sound of a child humming off-key, a promise whispered into someone's shoulder, and a phone that rang too soon. "I thought they were both dead," he says. Lucia doesn't respond. Instead, she pulls out a matchbook. Bar Rivas. A red dot circled inside. "She'll be there at 8, she says. "She'll wait until 10. After that, you're a ghost again." Hector pockets the toy horse. Stands. But as he turns to leave, she adds, "They're watching you." Who? Whoever's job it was to erase her. And maybe you. He hesitates. You mean the Russians? She shakes her head. No. They're old news. These men wear no flags. Outside, the rain intensifies. He drives home with the wipers barely keeping up. Every headlight in his rear view feels like it's following him. Every pedestrian looks like a tail. At his apartment, he double locks the door for the first time in years. He sits at the table, the toy horse in front of him. It doesn't feel like a relic. It feels like a test. He opens the Soviet passport again, studies the photo. The eyes match. Not just the shape, the weight behind them, the way they look like they've seen too much and promised too little. He doesn't sleep, doesn't even pretend. At 4 a.m., someone knocks on his door. One knock, nothing more. He doesn't answer. And when he looks through the peephole, there's no one there. Just a note tucked under the frame. Don't meet her. They will be watching. She is not what she seems. No signature, no return address, no decision made. Many people still think secrets are buried in vaults or archives. But most of the time, they're carried in shirt pockets, in childhood toys, in the eyes of daughters who ask, "Why didn't you come back?" And sometimes the answer isn't about loyalty or lies. It's just fear. The rain clears by morning, leaving the city sticky and uncertain. Clouds hang low over Buenos Aires like they're waiting for someone to confess. And Hector? He still hasn't made a decision. The toy horse sits on the kitchen table, unchanged, innocent. But now it looks at him differently. Or maybe he looks at it differently. Memory has a way of turning simple things into verdicts. He folds the red envelope again, slides it into the lining of his jacket. The Soviet passport stays hidden behind the brick. The other? The Argentine one, the copy with his real name and too much truth, he tucks into his back pocket. If things go wrong tonight, at least the right body might get identified. He drives the morning like nothing's changed. An old woman with a bag of oranges. A college kid talking about Peronist resurgence. A couple whispering in the back seat, clearly having the kind of affair that starts on Wednesdays and ends in courtroom depositions. The city keeps spinning, unaware, or pretending to be. By noon, Hector finds himself parked in front of a bookstall near Plaza Laval. Not by plan, just muscle memory. He used to come here during his military days, when he wanted to read something not approved by a colonel. The stall is run by a man called Leon. Short, wiry, one eye that doesn't quite track right. But he remembers everything. "You look like hell," Leon greets. "You should see the other guy." Hector replies automatically. They shake hands. Leon's grip is dry and strong. "I need a translation," Hector says quietly. Leon raises a brow. "I thought you didn't speak Russian." "I don't. That's why I'm here." He pulls out the note from the red envelope, the one with the coordinates and the phrase, "The river forgets. You must not." Leon studies it. This is old phrasing. Soviet military code language, not just poetic. What does it mean? He traces the characters with a fingertip. It's not just "the river forgets." It's more like the river is instructed to forget. Passive voice. It implies an order. So it's a warning? It's an instruction, Leon corrects. Someone was told to erase something, or someone, and you're being told not to. He hands it back like it's radioactive. Hector exhales. The street sounds louder now, like everyone suddenly started listening. "There's more," Leon adds. "This number, these coordinates, it points to the river delta, near Tigre, old naval dock." "I've been there," Hector murmurs. "I know. You brought a crate there once. For someone who never gave you their real name." A pause. "You want my advice?" Leon asks. "Not really. You're getting it anyway." Hector smiles faintly. "Don't go to that bar tonight," Leon says. "She'll be there, yes, but so will others, and some of them don't leave witnesses. And if I don't go, then the girl keeps looking, and the men behind her keep asking louder questions. Eventually, they knock on doors they shouldn't. Meaning, people like Leon. People who can disappear easily, permanently. Hector leaves him with a nod and a folded bill. He doesn't drive far, just to the river. Pulls over near an old, rusted dock where seagulls scream like they know too much. He lights a cigarette, watches the water roll slowly past, thick and brown with history. Once, in this very spot, he helped unload a crate stamped agricultural tools. Inside were rifles, not Argentine, not even Russian, Chinese, in mint condition. He didn't ask where they went, or who used them. He just drove. Now he wishes he had. The afternoon crawls by. The sun pretends to shine. Somewhere behind him, a car passes too slowly. His cab isn't bugged. He's checked twice. But still, he talks to no one, leaves no trace. Back home, he finds another note slid under his door. This one's typed. You think she's your daughter, but daughters don't work for men like that. This is a trap. You're the last thread. Cut yourself loose. It's unsigned, but the paper smells faintly of cloves. He's smelled that before. Once, on the gloves of a man who smiled too easily and asked too few questions, Hector holds the note over the sink, burns it, watches the ash spin down the drain like a lie he doesn't want traced. Many people still think betrayal comes in dramatic acts. Gunshots, slammed doors, final words. But often it shows up quietly. In the mail slot. In a familiar perfume on an unfamiliar warning. In a sentence typed by someone who knows how to vanish. And tonight Hector has a choice to make. Go to the bar or go to the river. Either way, someone is waiting. He doesn't go to the bar. Not yet. At 7:40 p.m., Hector's cab is already idling 4 blocks from Bar Rivas, tucked into a delivery zone between a shuttered tailor and a bookstore that sells more cigarettes than literature. From this angle, the street looks quiet. But it's the kind of quiet that hums, like something's breathing just beneath the cobblestones. He watches the entrance through his side mirror. At 7:44, a man steps out of a parked Fiat. Slim, black jacket. Nothing unusual, except for the way he checks his watch, then checks the street, then pretends to do neither. A second man, bigger, slower, leans against a lamppost directly across from the bar's entrance. He's not smoking, just standing, too still. At 7:48 she arrives. Sophia. No scarf this time. Hair down, dark waves over her shoulders, a gray coat too big for her frame. She walks like she knows she's being watched, but not like she cares. She doesn't glance around, doesn't hesitate, just walks straight inside. Hector doesn't move. He knows this setup. It's not just surveillance, it's leverage. If he shows, they'll know he's important. If he doesn't, they'll think he's afraid. He drives away. Not fast, not panicked, just calm. 2 rights, 1 left, then another right. He doesn't head home. He heads north, toward Tigre. He hasn't been there in years. Not since that night in 1955. He was younger then, still stupid enough to believe people had clean sides. Back then, it was just supposed to be a ferry drop. Drive the crate, hand it off, get paid. Easy. But when he'd peeked, just a sliver, he'd seen the guns. Military issue. Not Argentine. Not even meant for Argentina. The paperwork had Kyrgyz writing. The crate was marked for agricultural aid. No one ever asked him what he saw. They assumed he'd seen nothing. He parks now in the same gravel clearing. The dock is splintered, half rotted. The boathouse beside it is collapsed on one side, like a lung that gave out mid-breath. The river here is quiet. Too quiet. He gets out and waits. For what? He's not sure. The last light of day smears the sky with oranges and bruised purples. The water smells of old oil and distant storms. Crickets chirp like broken typewriters. Every sound feels like a choice. He walks to the end of the dock, the boards creaking beneath him like they're remembering his steps from long ago. He sits for 10 minutes, then 20. Then he hears it, a small motorboat slicing across the water with barely a ripple. No lights, no music, just a shape in the growing dark. It pulls alongside the dock. A woman stands up. It's not Sophia. It's her mother, Lana. She hasn't aged much, maybe because time doesn't touch people who live in exile. Her eyes are exactly the same. Calm, unreadable, always 2 pages ahead. She doesn't smile. "You left," she says. "You told me to. I told you to disappear. I didn't say forget." "I didn't forget," he says, pulling the wooden horse from his pocket. "I just didn't remember fast enough." She takes it, looks at it for a long time. "She found it," she says, and started asking questions. I tried to stop her. "She's my daughter?" "Yes." The word folds the air between them. "I thought they killed you both." They tried. The boat bobs softly. A wave from another passing vessel rocks it gently, and she steadies herself with one hand on the rail. "She has a passport with my face," he says. "She made it. From your files. She wanted something real. She doesn't know what real is. She knows you didn't come back. That's enough." Silence. "You're being watched," she says. "Not by the Soviets, not anymore. By what's left of them." I figured. "You need to leave." Too late. She looks at him like he's already a memory. "I'll tell her I saw you," she says, stepping back onto the boat. "Will that help?" "She doesn't need help. She needs to know you didn't run." "I did run," he admits, "but now you're here." She nods once. Then she disappears into the dark again. The boat fades into a ghost across the water, swallowed by mist and silence. He stays on the dock long after it's gone. The stars come out. Mosquitoes find him. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks, like it's warning someone too far away to hear. He finally heads back to the cab just after 10. No one followed him here, that he can tell. But someone was already there. Taped to his windshield is another photograph. Sophia. But this one is different. She's not alone. She's standing with one of the men from earlier. The one by the lamppost. Talking. Smiling. On the back of the photo, written in blocky, deliberate English, she's not looking for her father. She's looking for leverage. Many people still think love is what saves people from their past, but sometimes it's what finds it and buries it all over again. By the time Hector makes it back to the city, it's close to midnight. The streets of Buenos Aires are quieter than usual. Too quiet for a Friday. The air has that strange, post-rain metallic taste, like the city has just cleaned its wounds, but left the blood in the gutter. He parks the cab 3 blocks from his apartment. Not because he's being cautious, because caution, at this point, feels like a performance, but because he doesn't want to lead anyone directly to his door. Whoever left that photo on his windshield knew where he was, knew what to show, and knew exactly how to say it. She's not looking for her father. She's looking for leverage. He can't stop hearing it. The sentence echoes louder than the engine ever did. He walks slowly, eyes scanning shadows that don't move. He checks the windows above his building. No curtains shift. No silhouettes hover. But that doesn't mean no one's watching. He makes it to the 3rd floor and lets himself in. Double locks the door, slides the chain. He sits in the kitchen for a long time without turning on the light. Just listens. Pipes creak. The neighbor's dog scratches once and then goes quiet. Somewhere far off, a tram rattles like distant thunder. On the table, the toy horse still waits. He stares at it. It's too specific, too intimate. Something only the real girl, his girl, would have. And yet, she's seen with a man outside the bar, smiling, talking. Was it surveillance or choreography? It starts to feel like both. He paces the room. The wallpaper peels in one corner. He hasn't changed it in years. Maybe because it's easier to live in places that are already falling apart. He finally pulls out the red envelope again. There's something he missed. A second page, tucked behind the first. It's a list. 6 names, all familiar. 2 were generals. 1 was a diplomat. 3 were drivers, like him. All dead. Next to each name, a date and a method. Some look like heart attacks, some accidents. 1 just says, gone. His name is the last on the list. Vargas Hector, pending. And below that, a line of text. The archive is not safe. No more second chances. He reads it twice. The archive. He's heard that before. Long ago. In whispers among soldiers who got mail from places that didn't officially exist. A storage site. A vault. A room full of files that no one dared open, supposedly beneath a theater near Congreso. He still remembers the man who mentioned it, a liaison with nervous fingers and perfect French. That man disappeared a month later. His car was found. He wasn't. Hector sits down again. He's not just being watched, he's being closed. This entire thing, Sophia, the photos, the rendezvous, it isn't about family. It's about memory, and which ones need erasing. At 2 a.m., he drives again. No destination, just movement. He passes through Villa Crespo, the neon of pawn shops still buzzing. He stops near the Mercado de las Pulgas, where old radios and typewriters gather dust like forgotten men. In the lot, another car is idling, a black Chevrolet, tinted windows. He knows that car. He saw it once outside the tailor shop. It pulls away as he turns in, slowly, as if it had already seen what it needed to see. Hector gets out, lights a cigarette with fingers that shake just slightly. He doesn't look at the Chevrolet again. No point. It'll find him. Instead, he crosses the street to a payphone. Dials a number he hasn't called in 12 years. It rings once, then again. On the 3rd ring, someone answers. No name, no greeting. Hector speaks softly. I know about the archive, and I know I'm still on the list. A pause. Then, where are you? You'll find me. Click. He hangs up. He walks back to the cab, drives to the theater. At 2:42 a.m., the doors are still open. Buenos Aires doesn't close properly, not even the haunted places. The front is quiet. Dusty lobby. Movie posters from 3 seasons ago. But down a corridor, behind a velvet curtain, there's a stairwell he remembers from years ago. Narrow, stone steps leading down into what used to be a bomb shelter. He goes down. It smells like mold and reel film. At the bottom, a door. Heavy, rusted, no handle. He knocks once, twice, 3 times. A bolt slides. The door opens. A man steps aside without speaking. Inside, shelves, files, boxes stacked like tombstones. A fan spins above, not cooling anything. The archive. It hums with forgotten truths. He walks past faces he remembers. Faces of people who vanished long before their time. He finds his file. It's thinner than he expects, but still, it's there. A photograph, a report, a taped interview transcript, and a signature that isn't his. He stares at it. It reads, testimony received, clearance granted, subject, non-essential, close with cause. The signature belongs to a man he thought was dead, but if that man's still signing orders, then Hector's not just unfinished business. He's old business, the kind people don't like lingering. Many people still think governments forget, that after enough time, names fade. But some names don't fade. Some names are left in drawers to remind the next generation what silence costs. And now, someone wants Hector's drawer closed for good. He leaves the archive without taking the file. Not because it doesn't matter, because it matters too much. Carrying it would be an invitation, a flag, a reason for someone to end things quickly, without conversation. The man who let him in doesn't speak as he exits, just closes the door behind him like he's sealing a crypt. Maybe he is. Back on the street, the city has changed. At 4 a.m., Buenos Aires belongs to the delivery trucks, the women with cigarettes and regrets, and the men who think a knife means they're still in control. The air tastes like something burning far away. He drives until the sun threatens the horizon. Back at his apartment, there's a single red carnation stuck in the doorframe. A message, not Russian, not local, Cuban. Back in the 50s, he worked with a man named Esteban. Fat fingers, silver watch, mouth full of laughter and bullets. Esteban left notes that way. If it was a white carnation, you were clear. Red meant someone already decided your future. He doesn't go inside. Instead, he circles once around the building, watches from the opposite corner, sees a man in a tan coat leaning against the wall near the entrance, pretending to read La Nación. The man never turns the page. Hector gets back in the cab and drives away. He needs to disappear again. He needs to think. He heads to an old garage in the outskirts, one of the last places untouched by phones, papers, or memories. It belonged to a mechanic named Osvaldo, who used to fix government cars before he started losing pieces of his hearing and his faith. Osvaldo is gone now. Stroke or exile, no one remembers, but the garage remains, dusty and forgotten. He opens the side entrance with a key he hasn't used in over a decade. It still fits. Inside, silence. A single workbench, a shelf of oil cans and car radios, one wall with Polaroids of people who stopped showing up long ago. He sits on an overturned crate and finally exhales. He thinks of Lana, of Sophia, of that photograph in the archive, his name next to a signature he never expected to see again. He thinks of the others, the names on the list, dead men who probably never knew they were even on one. And then he thinks of that moment on the dock, of Lana's voice saying, "She doesn't need help. She needs to know you didn't run." But he did run. And now he's wondering if this is just another sprint toward the inevitable. He spends the morning in the garage, checking the car, rewiring the ignition to a kill switch he once installed for fun. He cleans out the glove box, finds an old photograph of himself and Esteban drinking café con leche at the docks, smiling like idiots. It was before everything, before the crates, before the politics, before the child whose eyes looked too much like his. At noon, he hears footsteps outside, slow, careful. He doesn't reach for the gun in the glove box, just waits. A knock, then a voice. "Tono, it's me." He opens the door. Elena. She's holding an envelope. "Someone left this at La Medianoche," she says. "Said it was for you." He takes it. No seal this time. Just his name in block letters. Inside, a photo. Not of him, of Sophia, with a date and time. Tonight, 10 p.m. Abasto, main platform. And below it, one sentence. No handlers, no tricks, or it ends. He looks up at Elena. "She's walking into a trap," he says. "Or she's walking out of one," Elena replies. He nods. There's no safe move left, only final ones. "Will you help me?" he asks. Elena hesitates, then, "Yes, but not because of you." "Because of her?" "No, because I'm tired of watching good people vanish." She leaves. He returns to the car, wires the kill switch a second time, just in case. At 9:45 p.m., he arrives at Abasto. The platform is mostly empty. A few kids with guitars, a man selling candy, a janitor who hasn't swept in 10 minutes. At 10:02 she appears. Sofia, alone. No coat, just a gray dress, hair tied back. She carries nothing. She walks straight up to him. He says nothing. She says, "You look older." He doesn't smile. "You don't look surprised." "I'm not." "You were followed." "I know." They stand for a moment, two strangers with matching blood. "I don't want anything," she says. "Not money, not apologies, just truth." "I don't have much left." "Then give me what you do." He reaches into his coat, pulls out the wooden horse. She takes it. "This was the only thing I kept from that time," she says. "I used to think it was just a toy. Then I realized it was a signature." He nods. I gave it to your mother. She said you had a choice, and you chose silence. She told you that? No, the world did. She steps closer. I'm being watched. I know that. But I'm not working for anyone. Not anymore. Then why the photos? The man outside the bar? I needed you to come to me, she says. And I needed them to believe I had something they wanted. What do you have? She leans in, whispers, your file, the original one, with his signature, the one they're still erasing people over. Hector's heart stutters. You have it? She nods. Then what happens now? Now, she says, we run. Many people still think the past stays in the past, but the past has legs, and tonight, it's sprinting down a subway platform with a father and daughter who don't know how long they have, only that they're out of time. They don't take the first train. That one's too obvious. Instead, they wait, standing side by side but not touching as the platform clears out. The janitor disappears. The kids with guitars pack up their soft tunes and wander toward the surface, leaving behind only the scent of reheated empanadas and cheap cologne. At 10:27, the second train arrives. It's nearly empty. The windows glow faintly yellow. One of the bulbs inside flickers, like it's thinking about dying but hasn't quite committed. They board, sit at opposite ends of the car, a trick from Hector's old playbook. Sit close, you look like a target. Sit apart, you look like two people on a collision course fate hasn't revealed yet. The doors hiss closed. The train pulls away. Neither of them says anything for the first 2 stops. Just the clatter of steel and the hum of electricity. The city gliding past in blur and flicker. Hector watches her in the reflection across the window. She doesn't fidget, doesn't blink too much. Calm, like someone who grew up on escape plans. It's not until the 3rd stop that she moves, sliding into the seat across from him. You're being followed, she says softly. I know? They're not Cuban. They're not Russian either. Then who? Private ex-intelligence contractors? He nods. Mercenaries. Who hired them? She shakes her head. They don't ask for resumes, just deliverables. And what do they think you have? Evidence. Do you? Yes, but it's coded. Without you, it's just words. Why me? You signed something once, a report, a confession. No, I never... You did. Not on purpose. You were recorded in a debriefing, talking about a delivery, one of the crates. Hector's memory twitches. That long afternoon in a military barracks. Heat. Fluorescent lights. A man with a clipboard asking polite, boring questions about shipping routes and engine condition. I didn't know what it was. I believe you, she says. They don't. They fall silent again. Outside, the tunnel opens to surface. The line curves into a raised track. For a moment, they're above the city. Moonlight catches the tops of the villas like spilled silver. She finally speaks. When I was 14, I found a tape. My mother had hidden it behind a loose brick. It had no label, just the year, 1955. Hector's stomach tightens. It was you, she says. Your voice? Talking about a transfer at the dock. About a man with an envelope and a handshake and a cargo you didn't check. I didn't check because I wasn't supposed to. You mentioned a girl, she continues. Said she had your eyes. That you weren't sure she existed. I wasn't. Well, she whispers, here I am. He looks at her, really looks. Not at the tactics, the calm, the code in her movements. He sees the jawline that matches his. The same crease between her brows when she concentrates. A tiredness that didn't come from running. It came from never stopping. You're in danger, he says finally. So are you. I've been in danger since I learned how to drive a car. She smirks, and yet terrible at staying in one place. The train slows. They switch cars. Mid-tunnel, no cameras. She leads. He follows. I have the file, she says, once they settle again. The real one, with the original report, signed, stamped, and sealed by the man who erased 15 people and blamed them all on foreign intelligence. It was never about the Cold War. Then what? A weapons shipment. That went missing. Hector nods. I delivered it, he says, to Tigre. They were never meant to find it again. And you were never meant to remember. I didn't, but they couldn't take the risk. He leans back. His ribs ache. His knees feel older than they should. They'll come tonight, he says. They already have. A beat. Where's the file? He asks. With someone I trust. That's not me? She tilts her head. Not yet. The train lurches. Sparks scatter outside the windows. Someone in the next car knocks over a bottle. Then, 3 sharp raps against the window beside them. He doesn't look. She already knows. They're here. He doesn't reach for a weapon. He reaches for her hand. Follow me, he says. They move fast, 2 stops early. Out the side door, down the stairs, through the turnstiles without a glance back. On the street, the city yawns with noise and neon. He leads her to a narrow alley behind a closed kiosk. He knocks on a door. A bolt slides. Ramiro, the bartender, no words, just a nod. He lets them in. Inside, the bar is empty. Lights dim. Silence soft as velvet. He locks the door behind them. I heard, Ramiro says. They're everywhere. Why didn't you call? Hector asks. I stopped believing in warnings. Started believing in outcomes. They sit. Ramiro pours them tea instead of whiskey. How long do we have? Hector asks. Till the ice melts, meaning maybe an hour, maybe 5 minutes. Sophia sips, calm. I didn't come here to hide, she says. I know. I came to make you remember. I remember enough, Hector says. No, she corrects. You remember what they let you keep. I came to return the rest. From her coat, she pulls a tiny object, a flash drive. He stares. Everything's on here. And then softly, will you read it with me? He hesitates, then nods. They don't plug it in yet. Just sit in the silence, together. For the first time in their lives, 2 people made from the same wound. Many people still think the truth arrives like thunder. But sometimes, it arrives like this. On a subway, in an alley, held in the hands of someone who shouldn't exist, but does. And suddenly, nothing feels more real. The flash drive sits on the bar like a ticking clock with no sound. Hector stares at it while Ramiro disappears into the back, muttering something about backup exits and coffee that tastes like the 1980s. The room feels padded with ghosts. Thick air, old wood, and the weight of decades unspoken. Sophia places the drive in front of Hector gently, like it's fragile, like it's sacred. It's encrypted, she says, but not beyond reach. Your voice print is part of the key. My voice? From that recording, the debrief, he shakes his head. You're telling me they used my own words to seal the thing that's going to kill me? She almost smiles. Irony's big in espionage. He exhales. You get that from your mother? No, she says softly. From you. He picks up the drive, turns it over like it might grow teeth. Where'd you find it? He asks. Elena gave it to me, said it had to go to you. Elena had this? She's more involved than you think. That much, he believes. Elena dances on the edge of every story in this city, showing up only when the rhythm turns dangerous. She's a compass made of secrets, always pointing where the silence is loudest. Hector plugs the drive into Ramiro's old laptop. It takes a moment, like the machine is trying to decide if it's brave enough. Then a prompt. Authentication required. Voice key plus code phrase. Sophia nods at him. Speak. He hesitates. Then, remembering that old dusty room in 1955, he says the phrase he hadn't thought about in decades. River cargo confirmed. Delivery complete. The screen flickers. Accepted. Files appear. Photos. Scanned documents. Audio clips. Signed reports. Shipping manifests. Surveillance logs. And names. Hector reads the first document. It's a transcript. A meeting between an Argentine colonel and an independent liaison representing a European buyer. The language is vague, but the implication is clear. Illegal weapons, quietly moved, with plausible deniability baked in. Then comes a surveillance photo, Hector's cab, at the Tigre docks. Another page, an analysis file, his debrief. Every word he said, transcribed. Driver claims ignorance, shows no awareness of cargo content, minimal ideological alignment, safe to use again, low priority for surveillance. He scrolls. More names. 2 men who are now government ministers. One who died in a house fire that may not have been accidental. And then a signature. Alejandro Padrón. Hector recoils like it burned him. You know him? Sophia asks. He recruited me in 1953, told me I'd be a driver for logistics work, said I'd be invisible, unimportant, useful. And you were, she says, until you weren't. He clicks the next file. An image. Sophia, age 5, labeled Asset D14. Potential leverage if subject Vargas deviates. He stares. They knew? They watched everything, she says. They didn't need to know I was your daughter. Just that I worked. Leverage, he mutters, like the note said. But it's worse. They didn't just know about Sophia. They created the situation. Her existence wasn't just tolerated. It was monitored, cataloged, stored for a moment like this. A fail-safe. What's the endgame, he asks, voice low. Sophia leans forward. You were meant to lead them to whoever still had the second half of this file. The part that proves Padrón and his network still operate. Quietly. As contractors, advisors, ghosts. And you? They thought I'd run. Thought I'd look for a father. They didn't expect me to bring the match to the archive. And you did run, he says, but not from them. She nods. I ran toward the truth, toward you. Ramiro returns with a black pistol in one hand and a cup of mat in the other. Bad news, he says. Let me guess. Hector replies. You're out of sugar. Ramiro gestures toward the window. Car parked outside. No plates. 2 men inside. One drinking coffee like he earned it. They're waiting. Do they know we're here? Sophia asks. Not yet, but they know he is. Ramiro jerks a thumb at Hector. They all go quiet. The laptop hums. Hector pulls out a cigarette, lights it slowly. They're not going to kill me yet, he says. Not until they have that file. Sophia nods. Then we give them something else. He raises an eyebrow. She smiles. The drive is duplicated. We leak parts, edited, just enough to rattle them, make them wonder how much we know. And then? Then we vanish, you and me. He laughs. It's quiet, hoarse, honest. You're serious. I've spent a lifetime hiding in other people's countries, she says. I'd like to spend the rest of it being someone. Ramiro checks his watch. You've got 20 minutes before they send someone through the back. Hector closes the laptop, hands it to Sophia. Go. What about you? I'll distract them. No. Yes. She grabs his hand. He lets her. They don't hug. They just look. And it's enough. She disappears into the alley. Ramiro leads her. Hector sits, lights another cigarette, waits. At exactly 10:59 p.m., the front door creaks open. A man steps in, black jacket, black gloves. He looks like someone who doesn't ask questions, just gives answers with bullets. You're Vargas? He says. No, Hector replies. He smiles, but I can play him for a little while. Many people still think courage is loud, a shout, a charge, a final defiant stand. But sometimes, courage is the sound of a father staying behind so a daughter can finally move forward. Even if the world won't remember the man, she will. They don't shoot him right away. The man in the black gloves steps further into the bar, eyes scanning for other shadows. He's professional, too smooth to be freelance, too precise to be anything less than military. He signals behind him. A second figure enters, taller, broader, no words, just confirmation. Hector is alone. He lets them look, lets them see a tired man, a cold drink, an empty seat. What did she take? The first one asks. She. You'll have to narrow it down. The second man slaps the bar with a thick hand. We're not playing. Neither am I. They flank him. One at the jukebox, the other at the far booth. Covering angles. Securing exits. Hector sighs and looks down at his cigarette. It's almost burned to the filter. You want the file? He says. I don't have it. Where is it? Gone. That's not a lie. Not entirely. They don't move yet. These men aren't here to kill. Not until they know. It buys him minutes, maybe seconds. He plays his last card. There's something you should consider, Hector says. If I'm still alive, someone out there thinks I'm useful. If I'm dead, that usefulness dies with me. You're bluffing. Maybe, he shrugs. Maybe I'm not. He stands. They let him. A mistake. Because Hector's left hand slides under the bar where he wired the ignition relay from his cab, an old habit from another life. He presses the hidden switch. Outside, his car, parked just close enough, sparks to life. The horn blares. The engine revs. It's loud, sudden, enough to draw eyes if not bullets. They flinch, just enough, and Hector moves. He dives sideways, grabs a bottle from the counter, and hurls it toward the booth. It shatters into 1,000 tiny truths. Glass in the eyes, chaos in the room. He runs. Not for the front door, too obvious, but toward the kitchen, where Ramiro once put in a dumbwaiter that never worked. Tonight it does. He crawls into the narrow shaft just as gunfire cracks behind him. 1, 2, 3 shots. Too slow, too wild. He lands hard in a basement, rolls. Ramiro is waiting. You get shot? No. Then move. They scramble through a tunnel, an escape route Ramiro once built in case he needed to flee bad debts or bad politics. Hector didn't think it would ever be used for him. At the end, a ladder, metal, cold, greasy. They climb out onto a back street. Moonlight, empty crates, silence. Sophia is waiting in a black car. She doesn't ask what happened. She just opens the door. He gets in. Ramiro tosses him a burner phone, then vanishes into the dark, like all good ghosts do. They drive. Not fast, just far, south, into the province. Out past the streetlights, toward the kind of quiet that doesn't come with power lines. After 20 minutes, she speaks. They'll come. They always do. What now? Now, he says. We flip the game. They stop at a safe house, an old train station turned hideout, somewhere near Bahia Blanca. A woman lets them in without a word. She hands Hector a file. Inside, names, locations, secure terminals, journalists, whistleblowers, back doors into archives they thought were closed. I have the rest of it, Sophia says. The full set, with the authentication chain, padron, the deaths, the shipments, everything. Where's it going? Everywhere. Tonight. I already sent it. He looks at her. She doesn't blink. She learned something from him after all. You didn't have to wait for me, he says. I wasn't waiting, she says. I wanted you to know, before the fire starts. He nods, then sits, and for the first time in weeks, he lets go. Lets the weight leave his chest, lets the silence settle in, lets himself believe, if only for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, they won't have to run forever, that the story might end before the bullets do. She sits beside him, pulls out the flash drive, places it on the table. They watch it, together. The files play like a confession, like an obituary, like a rebirth. They listen in silence, the crackle of old audio echoing between them. And at the very end, his voice, softer, younger. I don't know what was in the crates, but I delivered them. And if anyone gets hurt, I'll carry that weight. He closes his eyes. Sophia turns off the screen. He whispers, I didn't know she existed. I didn't either, she replies. Not until I needed to. A long pause. Do you believe in second chances? She asks. No. She smiles faintly. Good. Then this will feel like the first. They stay there until the sun begins to rise. The birds start before the light arrives. The quiet is complete. And Hector Vargas, driver, courier, survivor, sits with his daughter as the world begins to change around them. Many people still think the truth is the end of the story, but sometimes it's just the beginning of something better. Morning arrives slowly in Bahia Blanca, not with sirens or horns or the sharp clatter of Buenos Aires, but with low winds brushing over tired rooftops and sun slicing through dusty glass. It smells like the sea here, distant salt, rusted boats, and an old rhythm of survival. A place where the world forgets to check. Inside the train station turned safe house, Hector doesn't sleep. He rests, that rare, dangerous kind of rest where the body stays still, but the mind never stops moving. He sits by the window, a mate cooling beside him, eyes on the train tracks that haven't seen a locomotive in years. Just pigeons now. And wind. Sophia sleeps in the next room. She's curled on an old couch beneath a wool blanket too heavy for the season. Her chest rises and falls in slow, steady rhythm. No gun nearby, no shoes. Just a notebook resting open on her stomach. Half a page of handwritten names in Cyrillic. Half in Spanish. Bridges. That's what she's building. Hector watches the light crawl across the floor. A train whistle blows in the distance. Too far to matter. Probably cargo. Not people. Not anymore. He finally steps outside. The early breeze is cool. The gravel crunches beneath his shoes, and the sky is that soft pastel blue that only shows up when the city's too far behind to stain it. He lights a cigarette, not because he needs it, but because it gives his hands something to do. Old habits. Old comfort. The road is empty. Not even a dog in sight. But that's good. Quiet means possibility. From his pocket, he pulls a folded paper. It's a list. At the top, names we don't erase. It's her handwriting. His name is second. First is her mother's. He sits on the steps, lets the sun find his shoulders. The warmth is gentle. The kind that sneaks in, like someone trying not to wake you when they cover you with a blanket. For the first time in years, he feels unobserved, unguarded, unimportant. And that's exactly how he wants it. In a few hours, someone will call. A journalist, or a lawyer, or a man in Geneva with a briefcase full of damage assessments. The world will shift. Not explode, not collapse. Just shift. Quietly, slightly, like a record that skips, then finds the groove again. Inside, Sophia stirs. The blanket slides to the floor. She rubs her eyes, rises without urgency. Their movements are slow now, measured, deliberate, like people who understand time again. They meet in the kitchen. Say nothing at first, just move around each other in rhythm, like they've done it for years. Mate, toast, silence. Then she says, "They're going to come for us." He nods. "Maybe. You ready?" I'm old, not slow, a ghost of a smile. She sets a folded map on the table. It's marked with 2 red circles, one in Argentina, one in southern Spain. New names, new story, just in case. He doesn't ask where she got them. Doesn't need to. Do we disappear? She asks. Maybe just step aside. They don't need to hide anymore. They just need to live. They pack slowly. No urgency, no panic, just intention. When they leave the station, the sun is high. The wind has changed. The dust no longer rises. They don't drive fast. They don't look back. The flash drive, now duplicated and fragmented across servers, is no longer theirs to carry. The story has been passed on. The names exposed. The archive opened. Their job is done. As they drive, Sophia leans her head against the window. Hector glances over. She's humming. Soft. Off-key. The same tune her mother once hummed in a pension above a butcher shop. He joins in. And somewhere in the stretch of road between nowhere and freedom, a father and daughter carry the past, not to forget it, but to remember it properly. Let's slow it all down now. The noise fades. The tension softens. The gravel road quiets beneath the tires, and the engine becomes a lullaby, humming steady and slow. The city is long gone, and with it, the shadows that once trailed too close. What's left is a long stretch of road, wide skies, and the kind of silence that holds no danger, only peace. The morning light has turned golden now, warm on their faces, soft against the windshield. Everything feels like it's moving, but without rush, like the world is rocking gently, carrying them forward without need for answers. Hector leans back in the seat, eyes heavy, the corner of his mouth caught in something close to a smile. Not for what was lost, not for what they had to give up, but for what remains. Sophia sleeps again, a small curl of hair caught in the breeze from the window, her breathing slow and even. No more masks, no more fictions, just rest. Outside, the trees sway lazily. A bird glides overhead. Somewhere far off, a dog barks, not in warning, but like it's greeting the day. And the road rolls on, easy, open, quiet. You've made it through, listener. Now let yourself breathe. Let your mind let go. Let your body sink. And as the last image fades, a quiet car disappearing into the sun-drenched horizon. Close your eyes. Sleep well. You're safe now. They reach the coast by mid-morning, where Argentina kisses the sea in wide gray waves and fishermen nod without speaking. The safe house near Bahia Blanca was just the first breath. Now they drive further south, where fewer people ask questions, and even fewer care about the answers. Puerto Deseado, a fishing town cradled by wind and rumor. It smells of salt and old diesel, and the buildings lean like they've heard too much. There's a motel above a hardware shop that doesn't take names, only cash. They check in as father and daughter. Just another quiet family retreat no one will remember. Sophia spends most of that first day on the roof, watching the sea, not saying much. A cigarette she doesn't light twirls between her fingers. Hector stays inside. He doesn't need the ocean. He's had enough waves in his life already, mostly the kind that drown slowly. Instead, he reads. The laptop, now offline, holds everything. The rest of the archive, names, call signs, code phrases, alternate identities, and worst of all, plans that were never scrapped. Missions that were meant to continue if the world tilted in the right direction. Or the wrong one. One document lists funding sources. Half are foreign. The other half, local. So much for ideology. That night, they eat dinner at a place called El Delfín. A battered chalkboard menu. A waitress with too much eyeliner and a smile like a dare. The food is simple. Fried hake and rice, mate in tin cups. They sit in the corner, not out of fear, out of habit. We could disappear here, Sophia says softly. For real this time. He nods. Or in Spain. You marked that town, Tarifa. Close to Morocco, easy exits. He sips, thinks. You've planned for this, he says. I've had time. How long? Since I heard your voice on that tape. He leans back, studies her face. Do you want to keep running? He asks. No. Do you think we'll have to? She pauses. Then, probably. He doesn't push further. Instead, they walk back along the shoreline. The tide's out. The air is thick with stars and sea noise. In the distance, a ship's horn calls to no one. In their motel room, Sophia opens her notebook again. This time, the list isn't names, it's questions. What was in Crate 7? Who replaced Padron after 73? What happened in Caracas, 1982? Who is Bellman? What does the red horse symbol mean? Hector reads over her shoulder. The last one pulls at something old. The red horse. He remembers a medallion, tucked in the lining of a diplomat's briefcase. A carved horse, burned into leather. The man said it was part of an old Soviet doctrine, Red Cavalry Doctrine. symbolic of preemptive strikes cloaked in humanitarian missions. That's what the crates were labeled. Agricultural support. He says this aloud. Sophia doesn't write it down, just nods. Like she already knew, but needed to hear it from him. They're not chasing closure anymore. They're hunting clarity. The next day they get news from a burner phone, a secure line. It's Elena. They tried to storm Ramiro's bar. Didn't find him. But they left a message, a photograph of you, stamped with the word liability. Ramiro, okay? He's drinking on a beach. Swears he's never been freer. Oh, what about Padron? Gone underground, but not quiet. He's making moves, rallying old connections. Because of the leak? Because of you. She hesitates, then there's talk he's looking for Sophia. Hector stiffens. She's not a name anymore, Elena adds. She's a variable. He hangs up without goodbye. Sophia already knows. They pack again, but slower. Not in panic, in strategy. The plan now is to move west, across to Chile, then north. The Spanish option is still viable, but less so now that her face is known. They rest one more night in Puerto Deseado. No lights on, no conversations, just the sound of waves and a distant storm forming far off the coast. Hector wakes before dawn. He walks the beach alone, thinks about all the lies he's told, not to protect secrets, but to avoid knowing them. He was never a spy, never a soldier. He was a man who followed orders because the silence that followed felt safer than asking the wrong questions. Now, the questions are the only thing keeping him alive. Many people still think the story ends when the danger fades, but for men like Hector Vargas, the danger is the story. And when you stop running, it's only because the truth is finally running with you. They cross into Chile under different names. It's done the old-fashioned way, through a back-road checkpoint where the guards are more interested in thermoses and bribes than IDs. Sophia does the talking. Her accent slips between Buenos Aires' sharpness and vague Andean softness. She tells them they're father and daughter traveling to a family funeral, that she's a school teacher, that he used to be a mechanic. It all sounds plausible, because it is plausible. That's the most dangerous kind of lie. The one no one needs to question. Once in, they keep heading north. Route 5 takes them through the Atacama, where the desert doesn't just feel dead. It feels offended by the idea of life. Dry heat, flat land, cacti that don't wave. Even the wind feels dehydrated. Hector drives during the day. Sophia sleeps in patches. She dreams with her eyes open, watching hills, trucks, the occasional gas station where no one makes eye contact. They don't talk much, but when they do, the questions come softly. Do you ever regret it? She asks one night, outside of Copiapó. Which part? All of it. He lights a cigarette. Lets the question hang. I regret not asking more. Back then, when things still could have changed. She nods. That's a better answer than no. They stop at a hostel run by a retired fisherman and his wife. No security cameras. No internet. Just a chalkboard sign and the smell of onions frying somewhere in the back. The next morning, an email comes through. One of their prearranged drops. It's from someone who signed only as Bellman. Subject, Red Horse. Message. He's resurfaced, Istanbul. He's not hiding. He's collecting. Hector reads it twice. Then again. He can only mean one person. Padron. What is he collecting? Sophia asks. Not leverage. Not files. People. Hector replies. She nods slowly. We need to get ahead of him. The implication settles. They're not just running anymore. They're in the game. They stop in Antofagasta long enough to restock IDs, cash, a clean phone. Hector meets with an old contact named Carranza, a former logistics man who used to move oil under fake contracts. Now he runs a pawn shop and trusts no one under the age of 40. Carranza asks no questions, just hands over a package. Inside, a thin folder labeled Red Horse Survivors. 5 names, 2 dead, 1 vanished in Uruguay, 1 in Peru, and the last, A woman named Natalia Yegorova, current location, Istanbul. She was the handler for the original Crate 7 operation. Carranza says, voice low. Everyone thought she died in '63, but if she's alive, she's the only one who can testify it wasn't just Hector. Sofia finishes. Carranza looks at her, doesn't smile. Careful, girl. The people who built Red Horse didn't just plan wars. They planned erasures. He hands Hector an envelope. Plane tickets. 3 days from now, out of Arica. Destination, Spain, then Turkey. On the way out, Carranza says something odd. You know, Vargas, you were never invisible. You were just forgotten. That's not the same. It sticks. As they drive north, Hector asks, do you trust him? Sofia shrugs. Trust is a currency. He gave us something. We'll see if it bounces. They spend the night near the Bolivian border. It's cold. Sofia sleeps wrapped in a heavy blanket on a cot beside a broken stove. Hector doesn't sleep. He opens the Red Horse survivors file again, reads the names, the dates, the operations, the coded language, and in the middle of it all, his own name. Not written as a participant, but as a tool, a logistics variable. The kind of phrase someone invents to scrub accountability from memory. He was just a line item, a moving piece, and now that piece is awake. He steps outside into the thin mountain air, stares at the stars. In all this, he realizes, the worst part isn't being hunted. It's that he let himself be part of something without knowing what it was. But now he knows, and he won't be quiet again. At sunrise, Sofia joins him. He doesn't ask what she dreamt. She doesn't ask why he's already packed. Instead, she pulls out her notebook again. This time, she writes only one thing. We go to Istanbul, we find her. Then we decide what world gets to survive. He nods. No protest. No pause. Just clarity. Many people still think fugitives are cowards. But sometimes, the ones on the run are the only people brave enough to face what they helped build. And this story? It's not over. It's changing shape, and now it's heading east. Madrid greets them with rain. Not a storm, just a slow, deliberate drizzle. As if the city itself is offering them a soft landing, a chance to disappear into its tangled streets and foreign syllables. They don't stay long. The plan was never to hide in Spain. It was a checkpoint, a resting place between the old life and the next confrontation. A way to step off the continent without attracting too much light. They board the Istanbul flight 2 days later. Night flight, middle seats, no luggage, but a small backpack containing 2 burner phones, a portable drive, and 3 different versions of Sofia's passport. She doesn't speak during the flight, not even to order water, just stares out the window at clouds she's already memorized. She's calm in a way Hector never learned to be. Her quiet is not submission, it's calculation. That, he knows, she got from her mother. When they land, the city hums beneath them like a sleeping engine. Minarets pierce the morning haze, and the Bosphorus glints like something waiting to decide which side it's on. They check into a flat in Beyoğlu. 3rd floor. Overlooks a bakery that sells tea and suspicion. Hector chooses the window seat again, watching people who don't watch back. This is what he likes about Istanbul. Everyone's in motion, but no one seems to arrive. The folder from Carranza listed the contact, Natalia Yegorova. Last seen, Katakoy district. Known aliases, Mira Voshnaya, Rada Pavlenko. Known associates, classified. Known enemies, all unconfirmed. Except one. Padrón, are you sure she's alive? Hector asks. No, Sofia says. But someone wants us to think she is, which is almost the same thing. The cafe where she was supposedly spotted is a small place beneath a bookstore near the water. Tourists never find it. Locals pretend they don't go. They arrive before noon. They wait. Hector drinks thick coffee that coats the throat like truth. Sofia writes in her notebook, Words he doesn't ask to see. At 1:12 p.m., a woman enters. Tall, gray coat, hair pinned up, age difficult to place. She moves like someone who used to command rooms and now avoids mirrors. She walks past them once, then again. On the third pass, she stops at their table. Vargas, she says. It's not a question. She sits. No names, Sophia says. I don't use mine anymore, the woman replies. She pulls a cigarette case from her coat. Doesn't light one, just opens it, taps the lid once. Inside, where the cigarettes should be, are 3 flash drives. She places one on the table. No charge, consider it reparation. Hector picks it up. Doesn't ask questions yet. Lets her speak. I was there. Tigre. The crates. I signed off on the cargo manifest before the second transfer. Who else, he asks. Doesn't matter. Most are dead. The rest are pretending they are. Padron? She nods. Still alive, still pulling threads. Why now? Sophia asks. Why come out? Because I'm dying, the woman says. Because the man who erased your father's life is trying to rewrite history. And because I owe him. You owe him? Sophia's voice tightens. The woman looks directly at her. I recruited him. I trained him. He was my mistake. Silence. The cafe murmurs around them. Forks, glass, the sigh of the sea through nearby windows. I didn't know about you, Natalia says. Not until they started watching her. The photos. The trailing. I realized he'd left something behind. Something they couldn't erase. Sophia leans in. What's on this drive? Proof. The original signatures. Padron's, mine, and 3 others. Scans of the logistics contracts. All dated. All authenticated. Hector nods slowly. That's not enough. It's more than anyone else has, Natalia says. And it won't last. He's hunting copies now. Digital and physical. What does he want? Sophia asks. Really? Legacy, she says. He wants to be the last name in the file. Not the first. Not the architect. Just the survivor. They sit a while longer. Natalia eventually stands. You won't hear from me again, she says. Why not? Because I've said too much. And because someone's watching the man at table 5. And that means this place is no longer safe. They follow her eyes. A man with a newspaper. Sunglasses inside. No coffee. Hector turns to speak, but she's already walking out the door. Gone. They don't leave immediately, just casually enough. Sophia slips the drive into her coat lining. Hector leaves a tip too big for the coffee. They walk into the street and disappear into the current of the city. Back at the flat, they lock the door. Pull the curtains. Scan the drive. She was telling the truth. Every name. Every transfer. Every shipment labeled agricultural. Every time Hector's cab made a delivery. Every time his signature was used on something he never read. Why now? He mutters again. Sophia answers without looking up. Because Padron wants to become untouchable. And the only thing that stops men like that is light, Hector finishes. They sit in silence again. The city goes quiet outside, but they don't feel hunted anymore. Not now. Now they feel ready. They begin building the release. Files, timed leaks, anonymous drops. A story written by ghosts and finally told by the ones who refused to stay quiet. And somewhere across the city, in a glass building filled with modern lies, Padron finally receives word. They have it. Many people still think revenge is loud. But this is quieter, sharper, more dangerous. Because this isn't revenge. It's record-keeping. They don't hit send that night. Not because they're afraid, because timing matters. The documents are sorted, watermarked with fake metadata to confuse forensics, uploaded in staggered batches to multiple cloud servers under names like agricultural trade analysis and post-colonial fertilizer subsidies. Bureaucratic camouflage. Sophia sets up an automatic release timer, 7 hours and 16 minutes, just long enough to let the city breathe, long enough to make someone sweat. They sleep in shifts. Hector takes first watch. Not because Sophia asked, just because he knows that's what fathers do, even when they're 30 years late. He watches the old fan spin above the bed, the blades clicking softly like a record scratching every 3 seconds. He thinks about that first crate, the heat of the dock, the man who didn't shake his hand, the cigarette someone dropped on the pavement just before the truck pulled away. He wonders if that moment, just that single forgotten delivery, was what built all of this. At dawn they move. A hotel in Fati. A small room with a slanted ceiling and sheets that smell like someone else's fear. It's enough. Sophia monitors traffic. The first download happens before breakfast. Then another. A spike in Singapore. Then London. Someone copies the folder to Telegram. Another tweets it under a hashtag that will be banned in 12 hours. They don't take credit. They don't need to. The data speaks louder than they ever could. By noon, a reporter in Berlin calls it the Red Horse Papers. The story spins out fast, faster than they planned. By nightfall, 3 retired officials issue preemptive denials. One old general, living quietly in Uruguay, disappears. An obscure think tank releases a 94-page rebuttal that no one reads. And someone tries to scrub Hector Vargas's military records from 3 different digital registries. Fails. The ghost of his name reemerges, not as a villain, not quite a hero, but as the man who drove the crates, asked no questions, and then, decades later, refused to be silent. Meanwhile, across the Bosphorus, a man named Alejandro Padron watches from a window in a tower too modern for what he represents. He doesn't speak as his assistant delivers the news. He reads the names again. His, Natalia's, Vargas, Sophia's. He taps his pen, once, twice, then says, "They won't stop." "No, sir." "Then neither will I." But there's something in his voice that betrays the truth. He knows the narrative has already slipped. He won't stop them. Not in time. He calls a number that no longer rings. He closes his laptop, and for the first time in 20 years, he locks the door from the inside. Back in their hotel, Hector and Sophia sit on the edge of the bed, passing a bottle of Raku back and forth. No glasses, no toast, just silence. The kind that knows how to exhale. "I think we broke something," Sophia says quietly. "No," Hector replies. "We just peeled back the cover." "You think they'll come for us?" He shrugs. "Maybe, maybe not. But they'll think twice now." She watches him. "Would you do it differently?" He thinks. "Only the parts that matter." "That's vague." "I'm old. I'm allowed to be vague." She doesn't push. Instead, she pulls out her notebook, writes one last line. Now they know he existed. She closes it, tears out the page, hands it to him. He tucks it into his coat pocket. No ceremony, no sentiment, just memory recorded. They don't leave the next morning, or the one after. They don't need to. They're not fugitives anymore. They're witnesses, and in a world that forgets so quickly, sometimes that's the most dangerous thing you can be. Later that week, Hector steps into a small mosque courtyard. Not for prayer, just quiet. Birds flit across the sky like they've never worried about files, crates, or legacies. He sits on a bench and watches the world pass. No tales, no shadows, just time. Sophia finds him there. No words, just sits beside him. And in that stillness, between all the silence and the noise, they understand something neither could explain. This was never about revenge. It was about recognition. The acknowledgement that what happened mattered. That those crates weren't just shipments. That their names weren't just footnotes. That their lives weren't disposable. And now, they can finally be quiet, not to hide, but to rest. Many people still think the past is heavy, but the truth is, it only weighs as much as you're willing to carry it. And tonight, Hector finally sets it down. They leave Istanbul under different names again, this time with no plan to return. The passports are perfect. The flights are not. They bounce through Tbilisi, then into Rome. From there, a train to Marseille, where an old friend of Elena's runs a bed and breakfast full of forgotten artists and men with stories they only tell in daylight. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, they stop moving like hunted things. No eyes at their backs, no shadows waiting to catch up, just a terrace, some broken patio furniture, and a view of the harbor so wide it feels like it could swallow the past whole. Hector doesn't shave. He doesn't fix the limp in his left knee that's gotten worse since Istanbul. Instead, he spends his mornings with coffee and a book in his lap he never really opens. Just rests it there. Watches boats. Listens to the wind. Sophia adjusts slowly. It's hard for her, this quiet. She still flinches when a moped backfires, or when the host's dog barks too suddenly. She spends hours reorganizing the files on her backup drive, not because she needs to, but because control is comfort. Because stillness makes room for the ache. One afternoon, Hector finds her on the balcony, just staring. He pulls up a chair, waits. She speaks without looking at him. Do you think people like us ever really stop running? He sips his espresso. You're not running now. I feel like I'm just paused. That's a start. She frowns. And then what? Then you get to choose the next frame. She finally turns. You ever get to choose back then? He smiles. I chose silence. Thought it was safety. It wasn't. Sophia nods. I chose the truth. Thought it was justice. And? It's just heavier. They sit quietly, letting the weight settle between them. That night, the news breaks again. Another leak. This time from within the archives of a banking firm tied to the Red Horse network. Offshore accounts, bribes, black site funding disguised as logistics budgets. It confirms what the first dump only suggested. Padron's machine didn't die with the Cold War. It adapted, and now it's bleeding. The press doesn't name Hector, but they name Sophia, the woman behind the Red Horse disclosures. Some call her a whistleblower. Others call her a fraud, a Russian agent, a CIA plant, a ghost. She doesn't respond to any of it, just watches the world try to make sense of her. Hector tells her not to answer questions she didn't ask. She smiles at that, genuinely for the first time in days. In the weeks that follow, the attention fades. A new scandal, a politician's affair, a factory fire in Southeast Asia. The world forgets fast, but the right people don't. One morning a letter arrives. No name, just a seal. A red horse stamped on the envelope. Inside, a photo. Padron. Dead. Shot twice in the chest outside a train station in Sofia. Beside the photo, a note. No survivors, no architects. Hector folds it carefully, burns it in a metal ashtray. Doesn't say a word. Sophia sees the smoke. She doesn't ask. She already knows. They don't celebrate. They don't mourn. They just keep going. Because closure is a myth built by people who never had to fight for it. Instead, they build something else. Months pass. The seasons shift. Their safe house becomes a home, not just a stopgap. The host starts calling Sophia his niece. Hector fixes an old Vespa that rattles but runs. They learn the market vendors by name. They forget which country they're supposed to be in. One morning, Hector wakes early, steps out onto the terrace. The sun is just rising, brushing the sea with pale orange. Sophia is already there, sitting cross-legged with a notebook in her lap. She doesn't speak, just flips a page, then hands it to him. At the top, names worth remembering. Beneath it, a list. No files, no photos, just names. No code names, no titles, just people. Elena, Ramiro, Natalia, Carranza, even Esteban, the smuggler with silver teeth. Some of them dead, some still alive, some forever in between. And at the bottom of the page, alone, is a final name. Hector Vargas. He blinks, feels it settle. A name that doesn't mean ghost, or courier, or asset. Just a man, a father, present. Sophia says, I think we've earned some silence. He smiles, then folds the page, places it in his pocket like he used to do with cigarettes. I think we have too. And that's how they stay. Not hidden, not hunted, just quiet, together. For now, that's enough. And if one day someone comes looking, well, they'll have to start from scratch, because everything that mattered has already been written. In the quieter corners of Marseille, they become known simply as the Argentines. The locals never press. That's part of the city's charm. Everyone here has a past, and everyone knows not to ask about it unless invited. It's the kind of place where exiles, romantics, and failed revolutionaries coexist like moss on stone, clinging, quiet, outlasting the storms. Hector grows a garden, nothing fancy. Tomatoes, basil, a small patch of parsley that refuses to behave. He waters it every morning before the sun gets too high. It reminds him that things can grow even if they've come from nothing, that roots don't need permission, just time. Sophia takes up photography, not people, never faces, just doorways, cracks in plaster. The way shadows stretch over stones in late afternoon. She never explains why, and Hector doesn't ask. But he sees the same thing in her photos that he sees in her handwriting. Precision born of pain. They stay off the radar. No more burner phones. Just prepaid cards and a single laptop that never touches the same network twice. The files, the big ones, are archived now, distributed across 4 continents, held by organizations that don't even know they're holding them. Insurance. They don't talk about Padron anymore, or Natalia, or the crates. But some nights, when the wind changes, when the lights flicker too long, Hector still checks the locks twice. He still listens for the click of boots on concrete outside the window, just in case, because ghosts don't always knock. 3 months in, a letter arrives, no stamp. Just a folded envelope slipped under the door while they were at the market. Inside, a photograph, a boy, maybe 9 or 10. Dark hair, big eyes, standing in front of a school in Valparaiso. On the back, he's mine. I thought you should know. Al. Hector stares at it for a long time. Sophia reads over his shoulder, says nothing, but she places a hand on his back, gently. They don't talk about Lana anymore. She vanished after Istanbul, like someone whose part in the play had been finished. Maybe she found peace. Maybe she found safety. Maybe she never believed in either. But now there's a child, another branch in the story tree. One they'll never meet, one they don't need to. Just knowing he's there is enough. Proof that something survived. In late spring, Hector receives another message, encrypted, routed through 3 proxies, delivered via an old forum used by shipping companies in the 1990s. The rest are waking up. The files are spreading. You were the match. The fire is yours. B. Bellman, still alive, still watching. He doesn't reply. He closes the laptop, walks outside, feels the sun on his shoulders, smells the basil coming up in the planter box, and for the first time in years, he lets himself believe it might not all fall apart again. Later that evening, Sophia comes home with a camera full of shuttered windows and a baguette under her arm. She hums a song he almost recognizes. Something old. Russian, maybe. Or something from a lullaby no one remembers the words to. They eat by candlelight, not because they have to, but because they can. After dinner, she places a small parcel on the table, wrapped in butcher's paper, tied with twine. He raises an eyebrow. Open it, she says. Inside, a new passport. His face, a new name, but the same eyes. Beneath it, 2 tickets. Lisbon. Departure next week. She smiles, just in case we feel like changing the story again. He folds the paper carefully, places it on the shelf beside the radio. Doesn't answer right away. Then finally, not yet. She nods. They sit in silence for a long while, sipping wine, listening to the slow spin of a jazz record that clicks every 3rd revolution. Then Sophia asks, "What do we do now?" He thinks about it, then says, "We live," as if it didn't almost end. And they do. Not perfectly, not forever, but freely, which is more than either of them ever expected. Many people still think peace is what happens when the war ends, but peace is rarer than that. Peace is what happens when you stop carrying the war with you. And tonight, under quiet stars, in a borrowed house on a borrowed name. Hector Vargas and his daughter finally set the last of it down. The summer rolls in with a kind of heat that silences everything. In Marseille, the streets glow white by noon. The shutters stay closed. The cafes hum quietly, and the sea turns lazy, reflecting sky more than light. It's a season that asks for stillness, and for once, Hector listens. He's tanned now, the sort of bronze that comes from forgetting to be afraid of daylight. He walks without his jacket, no shoulder rig, no backup key sewn into the cuff. He even buys a ridiculous straw hat from a vendor who calls him Señor Tango and refuses to negotiate the price. Sophia spends her mornings in the garden, not photographing, but painting. Watercolors, fast and abstract. She doesn't show them to anyone, not even Hector. But sometimes she leaves one on the kitchen table, weighed down with a spoon. He never asks what they mean. He just keeps them all. One day she paints the red horse. No title, no context, just a silhouette, blood dark on beige paper, standing alone in a field with no borders. He frames that one. Silence has become their common language, not avoidance, just understanding. The words don't need to carry the weight anymore. They've said everything that needed saying. Then, out of nowhere, a knock at the door. Hector's heart doesn't leap, but it does pause. Sophia glances up from her notebook. Her eyes sharpen just slightly. No one is expected, but nothing feels urgent. When Hector opens the door, it's a boy. Teenaged. Tan skin, wiry frame, dressed like a delivery kid. He hands over a package, brown paper, sealed with wax. Then he leaves. Doesn't wait, doesn't ask for a tip. Hector closes the door, places the package on the table. They stare at it for a while. Finally, Sophia breaks the silence. If it's from him? It's not, Hector replies. He's gone. But his reach wasn't. He unwraps it. Inside, a book. Worn leather cover. The title burned away with time. Inside the cover, a single line written in fountain pen. The memory of men is shorter than their consequences. No name, no signature. Just that. They turn the pages. It's not a journal. It's a dossier. One Hector recognizes immediately. The original Red Horse Doctrine. Pre-Crate era. Pre-Vargas. Strategic outlines. Decentralized command trees. Supply chain tricks written in the margins by people who thought war could be franchised. Sophia exhales through her teeth. This shouldn't exist, which means it still does, he says. They read for hours. Then they scan the pages. Encrypt, fragment, archive, but they keep one chapter out. One thin sheaf of yellowed pages about legacy operations, about second-wave networks, about recruitment tactics so subtle that the recruits don't know they've signed up until it's too late. Sophia doesn't say it, but Hector knows. It's how he got pulled in, and it's how others still will. That night she drafts a letter. It doesn't go to the press. It goes to a young analyst at a university in Warsaw who published a strange, too specific paper last year about logistics during the Cold War. A paper that was scrubbed 2 days after posting. Sophia tracked him months ago. She sends him the chapter. No explanation. Just a note. Don't believe everything they declassified. Then they go to bed. And for the first time in years, neither of them wakes up at 3:01 a.m. Weeks pass. Then a ripple. The paper reappears. Now expanded. Peer-reviewed. Tied to modern defense budgeting. With careful footnotes and cautious warnings. But it's there. Buried in language but glowing underneath. The idea that the Cold War never ended. Just changed uniforms. It starts a whisper among people who still care. Old soldiers, new watchdogs, quiet thinkers in high places. And while it doesn't explode, it echoes. By late August, Sophia starts sleeping in. Hector stops checking the mail. The story, the real one, has been handed off again. Passed like a candle, lit at both ends, left in hands steadier than theirs. He doesn't expect to live forever. But he didn't expect to live this long. And that's something. One evening, as the sun sinks into the sea and the wind forgets to be warm, Sophia pours 2 glasses of wine and joins him on the steps outside. They watch the lights come on in the harbor below. It's quiet, she says. He nods. It is. She hesitates, then, does it ever feel too quiet? He smiles. No, not anymore. She sips her wine. I think we did something good. I think we stopped something worse. A pause. She looks at him and says softly, I'm glad you're still here. He doesn't answer. He just places his hand over hers, gentle, grounded, grateful. Many people still think stories end when the fighting stops, but stories like theirs never really end. They just settle into lives that don't need explaining, into mornings without news, into names spoken only by those who remember. And as long as one of them does, the story goes on. The calendar turns unnoticed. Autumn glides in without ceremony. No loud storms, no sudden cold. Just a slow shifting of light and air. Sophia starts wearing sweaters in the evening. Hector adds a scarf he found in a market bin for €2. It's blue, with a coffee stain he never bothers to wash out. The garden fades a little. Basil goes to seed. Tomatoes stop flowering, but he still waters it. Not for growth, just for rhythm. Some days, they don't speak at all. Not from distance, from comfort. They've learned to measure the silence, not in emptiness, but in understanding. He knows when her quiet means thought, and she knows when his means memory. In October, a letter arrives, handwritten, Spanish, from Esteban's nephew, of all people. Claims to be sorting through the old man's storage unit in Montevideo. Found a box marked Tigre. Inside, photos, ledgers, a partial manifest that references Crate 9, a shipment neither of them had ever seen before. Sophia frowns. How many crates were there? Hector doesn't answer, because he doesn't know, and that bothers him more than he says. They write back, cautiously, ask for scans, clarification. What they receive in return is chilling. A photograph, grainy but unmistakable. Hector's cab, backed into the shadow of the Tigre warehouse, dated 2 weeks after he'd been pulled out. A second crate being loaded. One he never saw, never signed for. The photo is marked Redline Quiet Shipment. Sophia leans over his shoulder. That wasn't you? No, he says, staring. It was someone else, with my name. She goes still. It means Red Horse didn't die with Padron, she murmurs. It went freelance. That night, she pulls out the drive they thought they were finished with. Starts rebuilding the tree, layer by layer. New branches. Names they never considered. Black sites that shifted continents. She doesn't panic. She prepares. This is who she is now. Not a whistleblower. Not a shadow. A chronicler. A cartographer of rot. Hector, for his part, goes back into his notebooks. Not the archive stuff. Just his own recollections. Smudged pages. Lists. Notes about names. A fuel receipt from 1956. A weather log from the night Lana disappeared. These were things he always kept, never knowing why. Now he understands. Not for vindication, but for confirmation. He may not have known everything, but he was there. And the ground beneath his tires still carries the imprint of those days. They work late into the night. The flat glows softly. No one bothers them. Not here, not yet. But they know someone will. Not to kill them, not now. That would be too crude, too final. No, someone will come to offer them choices, silence, money, relocation, the illusion of safety in exchange for compliance. Sophia drafts a response before the offer ever arrives. You cannot bribe away memory. You can only delay who holds the pen. She uploads it to a hidden node, tags it with a simple phrase. Redline begins again. Then she closes the lid and breathes. That weekend, Hector takes the train to Cassis. Alone. He tells her it's for errands, but really it's for space, for the ocean, for one more conversation with a piece of the past he's not ready to let go. He walks the docks, finds a fisherman who knew Esteban. They don't speak of war or crates, or the ghosts of men in coats. They talk about fish, salt, fuel prices. On the way back, he buys a notebook from a tourist shop. Blank. Not for operations, not for code names, for recipes, for the little things he remembers his mother making, for the things he never wrote down because he never thought he'd live long enough to miss them. Back home, Sophia finds the notebook. She doesn't laugh. She starts adding to it. A Turkish lentil stew she learned by accident. The perfect ratio for mate. A marinade that Ramiro once mumbled over a bad hand of cards. They're building a different archive now, one meant to be found. In late November, another message arrives, digital, buried in a back-end news site's comment section. One word, courier. It's a signal, one used only by Red Horse operatives who never completed their last job. A warning, someone's still out there, someone with clearance, with history, with regrets. Sophia reads it once, then deletes it, not out of fear, out of choice, because this time they don't have to follow the trail. The trail can find them, and when it does, they'll be ready. Many people still think survival is the end of the story, but real survivors know better. Survival is just the next assignment, only now you choose the terms. The wind shifts in December, not in a poetic sense, literally. The Mistral arrives from the north, a dry, cold gust that whips down the Rhone and stings the skin clean. In Marseille, the locals mutter about it like it's a cousin who visits once a year and overstays his welcome. Doors rattle. Window panes creak. The world sharpens at the edges. Hector doesn't mind it. It keeps things honest. Sophia, on the other hand, starts waking in the middle of the night again. She says nothing about it, but he hears her. Padding to the kitchen, boiling water for tea she never finishes. Once, he finds her staring at the radiator like it had spoken. "What are you thinking?" he asks. She answers that the quiet doesn't mean it's over. He nods. She's right, because something has changed. It's not fear, it's expectation. They can feel it in the way people glance too long at the mailbox, in how a car parks half a block away and stays there all afternoon, in how the same cafe waiter forgets their order 3 times, then remembers the exact table Hector sat at last week. Signals, not overt, just present. Then one day it comes, not violence. An invitation, delivered by courier. This time, a real one. On a scooter with a blue jacket and a barcode scanner. An envelope. Inside, an embossed card. Gold lettering. Elegant. Mr. Vargas and guest, you are formally invited to attend a private discussion concerning legacy preservation, asset reconciliation, and reputational strategy. Location, Geneva. Date, January 14th. Time, 21 now. Transportation arranged. No sender. But they know exactly who it's from. Sophia reads it, then says they're not hiding anymore. No, Hector agrees. They're negotiating. What do? We show up. She stares at him. You want to walk in? I want to see who thinks we can be bought. He folds the card, places it on the shelf next to the framed painting of the red horse. That night, they begin preparing, not for a leak, not for a retreat, for a conversation. Geneva in winter is glass and silence and wealth so old it doesn't need to explain itself. They arrive without fanfare, no luggage, just small carry-ons with duplicate passports and carefully useless data sticks, enough to suggest leverage, but not enough to be leverage. The car meets them at the airport, unmarked, black, quiet suspension. The driver wears no badge, doesn't speak. Drives with the calm of someone who knows the roads and isn't afraid of their destination. The building is nondescript, modern. Clean lines, pale stone, lobby that smells of leather and discretion. They're led to a top floor, a private room. Inside, 5 people, 4 men, 1 woman, all late 50s to 70s, dressed like retired bankers or sitting diplomats, eyes sharp, posture casual, but watchful. On the table, wine, water, no food. On the walls, nothing. It is, Hector thinks, the kind of room built for conversations no one wants recorded. The woman speaks first. Mr. Vargas, Ms. Vega. Thank you for coming. Sophia corrects her. Vargas, we stopped hiding. A pause. The woman nods once. So noted. Then the man to her right says it plainly. We'd like to purchase your silence. There it is. 3 seconds of stillness. Then Sophia laughs. Short, dry, not amused. Do you know how long it took me to unerase my father? She says. Do you think I'd sell that for a pension? The man doesn't blink. We're not offering you a pension. Of course not. Hector says. You're offering us a clean exit. He gestures at the table. Fake identities, neutral territories, guarantees of non-pursuit. Another nod. And if we refuse? The woman responds, nothing happens. Today. There it is again. The real threat. Not bullets, not fire, just patience. These are people who can afford to wait, but they miscalculated one thing. So Sophia leans in and drops it. You think we're the source, but we're not. The room shifts. The man on the left stiffens. She continues. We were the first, but not the last. You're too late. It's not a leak. It's a contagion. She pulls a small flash drive from her coat, sets it on the table. It's empty, she says, but it looks real. So if someone walks out with it, someone else in the room will think you made a deal. And if you don't take it, someone else will wonder why. A long pause. Then the oldest man in the room, the one who hasn't spoken at all, finally says, She's you, Vargas. Hector nods once. Better? He replies. They leave 5 minutes later. No one tries to stop them. No follow car. No offer repeated. Just silence. But a new kind. A heavier kind. The kind that means they've been outmaneuvered. Back in Marseille, nothing changes. Not really. But everything feels different. Like they walked through the final door. Like they said, we are not afraid of what you can take, because we've already reclaimed what was ours. Hector tends to the parsley again. Sophia prints her photos for the first time. A full gallery wall. Shadows. Doors. The sea. A woman. Faceless. Looking out a window. And in the middle, a single sharp image of an old Ford taxi. Parked. Empty. Driver's door open. Keys still in the ignition. And next to it, a red envelope. Unopened. Many people still think endings are defined by what's said. But in truth, the most powerful ending is the one where you choose not to reply. Marseille exhales in January. The wind softens. The sea calms. The city, like an aging animal, stretches its bones and settles back into the rhythm of a life it never quite needed to explain. For Hector, each day begins with the same ritual. Open the shutters, check the horizon, make the coffee. The rituals matter now, not because they're necessary, but because they are his. No more hidden drives, no more phone calls and code, just coffee, sunlight, and the faint sound of Sophia sketching upstairs. They've been back from Geneva for 2 weeks. No reprisals, no fallout, nothing yet. But in the world of ghosts, silence is its own storm warning. Hector doesn't fear it anymore. He respects it. Sophia has stopped waking at 3 a.m. Instead, she's taken to writing again. Longhand. Journals filled with fragments, dates, impressions. Not dossiers, memoirs. But never published. Never shared. Who are you writing them for? He asked once. She shrugged. For whoever finds them when we're gone. One afternoon, a knock at the door. A boy, again. Not the same as before, but the same look. Quiet, sharp, used to carrying messages meant for people who no longer exist on paper. He hands over a small box. Inside, a key. Old, worn. No label, no return address, no message. Sophia turns it over. Do you recognize it? He does. A storage locker in Buenos Aires. One he hadn't visited since 1964. It was supposed to be cleared out years ago. After the last shutdown. After Red Horse disbanded. Or said it had. He never went back. Never dared. They leave 2 days later. Not out of fear, out of curiosity. Buenos Aires feels smaller now. Hector's knees ache from the plane. Sophia wears sunglasses she doesn't remove. even indoors. They take a taxi from Aziza to a neighborhood neither has mentioned in years. And there it is, the same depot, still standing, barely. Unit 108, the lock clicks, the door groans. Inside, dust, old crates, a broken chair, and a box, plain metal, stamped, Crate 0. Sophia freezes. 0, she whispers. The first, the one that came before the shipments, before the doctrine, before Vargas was even Vargas. He reaches out, hesitates, then opens it. Inside, not weapons, not files, just a reel-to-reel tape recorder, plugged into a hand-labeled spool. El legado del conductor, the legacy of the driver. He doesn't press play. He just smiles. I was never the weapon, he says quietly. I was the witness. Sophia places a hand on the machine. She says nothing. The box stays open for a while. Then they lock it up again. Leave it where it is. Not to forget. To preserve. They don't tell anyone they came. No messages. No letters. But later, when they're back home, Hector places one photo on the fridge. Grainy, faded. Him, standing beside the cab, 1962. A man with too many secrets and nowhere left to put them. Except now, they've all found a home. Many people still think history is about what happened. But Hector learned it's about what people choose to remember. And sometimes, the greatest legacy isn't what you reveal. It's what you protect. The truth doesn't need fireworks. It needs guardians. And that's what they've become. The cab never ran again. But the engine never really stopped. Not in memory. Not in consequence. And not in the hearts of those who drove through history, without ever needing to be seen. And now, we rest. Picture Hector standing beside his little garden in Marseille. The late sun warming his back. The faint smell of salt in the air. He watches the basil sway in the breeze. Hands in his pockets. No rush to move. Inside, Sophia is humming again. Low, tuneless, content. Her notebook lies open beside a half-drunk cup of tea. A cat from down the street naps on their windowsill, twitching in its dreams. There's no more chase. No more running. No more names that change with every airport or codes whispered into cold hotel phones. Only time. And soft, undemanding peace outside the city. The sea breathes slowly, brushing the coastline with an old, familiar rhythm. And inside, in that small apartment on the 3rd floor of a quiet block, 2 people have finally learned how to live. If you're still awake, let your body sink just a little deeper. Let the tension go, whatever you're holding on to. You don't need to solve anything tonight. Not every story has a clear ending. Some just coast to stillness, like a cab gliding to a stop at the end of a long, silent road. You're safe here. The engine's off. The door's open. The journey's done for now. Sweet dreams.